Let's dive into a story that starts with a moment so perfect, you just know it's about to break. Our main character points to the legendary Tillman Castle, a fortress that hasn't fallen to a single enemy in 200 years. But Katarina isn't interested in history lessons. She's panicking, telling Simon they need to get out of there immediately. He tells her to relax, saying they're not supposed to be in this restricted area. He assures her no one will find them at this hour, but she's still worried. She reminds him she still has cleaning duties to finish. But he insists it'll only take a moment, wanting to show her the incredible scenery. He tells her the view is especially amazing at this time of day, but she just sighs. She asks what's so great about the land of nobles, a place they could never even dream of living. But he tells her that might change soon because he might be able to buy a house there. He's confident he's about to be promoted to an intermediate mage. He explains he wrote a thesis on a brand new golem, and his seniors absolutely loved it. If the elder gives his approval, the promotion is practically guaranteed. He admits it won't be a huge mansion, but it'll be a home where the two of them can finally live together. And then he asks her to marry him. He takes her hand, telling her she's suffered way too much because of him. But from now on, he promises to make her the happiest person in the entire world. For a second, she's completely speechless, then teases him back. She tells him to actually become an intermediate mage first before saying things like that. She playfully touches his lips, making him blush and stammer that she's being mean. She bursts out laughing at his adorable reaction, telling him she's just kidding. She never expected a day like this would actually come for them. Simon thinks yes, they can be happy. Because he has poured his entire life into building this future for them. And right here is where our story takes a brutal, heart-wrenching turn. The scene shifts, and Simon overhears the elder being praised for a new golem technique. The Duke tells the elder that his thesis will literally change the world. The elder just laughs. He gives all the credit to the Duke's generous investments. In that moment, Simon's stomach drops. He realizes it was all a lie. No matter how hard he works, his status will never change. The Duke then asks the elder about a certain request he made. The elder reassures him, saying he hasn't forgotten about it. The Duke asks if he's really okay with it, and the elder's response is ice cold. She's just a woman of lowly birth. Suddenly, Simon sees knights dragging a woman forward. And his world shatters. It's Katarina, shaking, injured, and terrified. They force her toward the Duke and the elder, and all Simon can think is that this can't be real. Just because they're commoners, it doesn't give these monsters the right to trample all over them. The Duke smirks, saying he's heard Katarina was famous for her beauty. And now he sees she's everything he expected and more. The elder casually agrees. He adds that if she weren't a commoner, she would have lived a much different life. Simon sees his dreams, his entire future, being torn apart right in front of him. Everything he worked so desperately to protect is being destroyed in an instant. Raw power gathers in his hand as pure rage takes over. He screams at them, asking how they could destroy everything like it was nothing. "Take your hands off Katarina," he roars. The elder just scoffs, calling him a pathetic brat. A terrifying amount of power gathers in the elder's hand as he tells Simon to learn his place. Calling him nothing but trash, the elder unleashes a blast of power right at Simon. It shatters his glasses and slams into his body, sending him flying backwards. Katarina can only watch in horror as he's thrown, hearing her worriedly call his name. Weeks later, Simon is in a dark cell, and trust me, this is where his nightmare truly begins. The other rats creep closer, but he just stares back, thinking he's completely powerless. He grabs one, looking at the crude scratches on the wall he used to count the days. He doesn't even know how he's managed to survive this long in the darkness. Suddenly, a spear stabs the wall behind him as knights mockingly ask if he was hungry. They sneer that even a great mage from the magic tower is worthless down here. The first knight tells him to just give up and spill the beans already. He says if Simon just helps them summon the golem, they'll let him go immediately. But Simon stays silent. The knight snaps, angrily asking if he's even listening. The second knight just laughs, reminding his partner that Sion went crazy after that woman died. Now pay attention, because what they reveal next is the moment that shatters him. The first knight asks how Katarina died. The second one replies that she took her own life. He says she did it to protect her honor, her fidelity. And then he adds what a complete waste of a life it was as they walk away. Simon overhears them laughing, saying Katarina was way too pretty to die like that. What a pity, they say, and that remark, it ignites a firestorm of pure rage in Sion. He bites his own finger until it bleeds, whispering a broken apology to Katarina. That's when the knights notice the rats, swarming around like they're searching for something. The first one asks why the rats are acting so strangely all of a sudden. He says it's like they're all waiting for some kind of signal. The second knight senses something is terribly wrong, ordering his partner to spear one of them. He does, but the second the spear hits, the rat's body erupts in a flash of light. A magic circle appears, absorbing the creature's blood and leaving the knights in shock. Meanwhile, Sion is drawing his own magic circle using the blood from his finger. He thinks to himself that he was just too damn weak. The knights finally see him. They scream at him to stop, but he ignores them, a cruel smirk on his face. Stop, he tells them, he's only just getting started. This is for her. Then he slams his hand right into the center of the bloody magic circle. The rats start screaming as magic circles ignite from inside their own bodies. Sion thinks back bitterly, if he'd only been stronger, he wouldn't have lost Katarina. And with that final surge of rage, he activates the spell. The entire cell explodes. When the smoke clears, you and I see him standing there. A massive shadow looms behind him. The knights can't believe it, a rat golem. Sion coldly tells them the looks on their faces are the exact same ones he saw on Katarina's. He had been trying to find a reason to keep living, to survive this hell. The rat golem moves one slash and both knights are sliced clean in half. He and his monster burst out of the prison. Now he finally understands. He's alive for one reason and one reason only, to get revenge on this cursed world. A world where he and Katarina could never be happy together. He orders his golem and rats to attack everyone in the prison. He tells Katarina not to worry. He promises her he won't be weak anymore. He'll get any power he needs to change it all. And with that vow, Sion finally arrives at the Elder's location. All right, stick with me, because we're starting with our guy standing in a massive rat golem. The Elders are absolutely losing it, calling him a bastard and asking if he's lost his mind. How could someone who served God stoop to black magic and work with demons? Simon just asks, so what? The Duke starts begging, offering him the entire land. He pleads with Simon, promising that if he's spared, he'll do absolutely anything. Simon just raises a hand and completely incinerates the Duke on the spot. Then he coldly states that he can't bring back the dead anyway. With that, he obliterates the entire magic tower, making a vow to Katarina. He swears he will destroy this entire cursed world, days later in a different kingdom. Now pay attention, because this is the other side of the story. The world has fallen into shadow, with the Demon King's army on the move. They're corrupted, evil, and are trampling through God's territory, slaughtering everyone. The king explains that 2 kingdoms have already fallen to this evil army. And now, the fate of the entire world rests solely in the hands of the hero, Lan. The king begs him kill the Demon King and save them all. Lan accepts. He takes the sword and with it, the responsibility for the entire world. Raising it high, he calls on the brave warriors of the divine Artinia Empire. He proclaims that the brilliant light of their empire has faded. A massive shadow is swallowing the Logia continent, but he declares they will not back down. For their families and for the world they will fight. He rallies the warriors, shouting that today they kill the Demon King and become humanity's last hope. But let's rewind for a second, because we need to see how it all started. In the library of the Magic Tower, Katarina asks Simon if he's heard the news. She questions how anyone could justify cutting off a child's hands just for stealing bread. He stammers, telling her to quiet down, worried someone might hear. But she just shouts back that the nobles can only do that because they've never been hungry. They can hand down punishments like that so easily. She asks why that child had to be punished so unfairly. Was it just because of the social class he happened to be born into? She sadly tells Simon that children don't get to choose their circumstances. Her words make him smile. He says maybe one day social status won't matter. A day when everyone can live as equals, but she's not having it. She tells him that a day like that won't just happen by waiting around. He asks what she wants to do, and she replies that they have to be the change. They have to create the world they want to see. Otherwise, their own children will just go through the same kind of suffering. Simon is so shocked he drops his books, shyly shouting that they aren't even married yet. She calmly tells him that's not the important part, then asks if he's not planning to marry her. The question leaves him blushing and completely speechless. He stammers out that he will marry her, he's just not ready yet. As he picks up the books, she teases him again, so are you going to marry me or not? He finally stammers out that he will. She bends down, looking him right in the eyes. She says he's so terrible and shy, she's probably the only one who would ever marry him. Back in the present, that same magic tower is now a demon's realm. And you and I just saw how the man once so happily in love became completely consumed by darkness. Alright, let's dive right into the final battle that was meant to end it all. Lan and his warriors finally arrive at the demon realm, ready to create the world they dreamed of. The soldiers march on Sion but stop dead at Lan's command. Lan calls out to Simon, the demon king, blaming him for filling the world with pure suffering. He declares that today, right now, it all comes to an end in the name of God and justice. Sion's evil deeds will finally be judged, but the demon king. He just laughs in his face, mocking Lan's faith in some false god and their hypocritical justice. Oh, but Lan is not having it. He screams back that Simon absolutely should fear it, raising his blade high. He roars that countless heroes of the Empire stand with him, ready to bring down judgment. Rallying his men, Lan declares they will take down the Demon King and protect their world. With a final war cry, he launches himself at Sion, and the battle begins. His warriors charge right behind him, their spears aimed to kill. Sion just scoffs, asking who they think they are to judge him. In his eyes, he is the only judge. He slams his wand into the ground, unleashing a terrifying wave of power. And trust me, what he screams next changes everything. The day Katarina died, so did justice. The raw force of his grief stops everyone in their tracks. Sion declares he no longer believes in illusions like justice. The only thing he believes in now is absolute, undeniable power, and he unleashes a massive golem. Its scream alone is enough to blast Lan and his warriors back. Sion tells him to witness the birth of what he calls true justice. He denounces their faith as a lie and declares a brand new era is about to begin. Behind him, an entire army of golems rises from the earth. One charges forward, its massive fist ready to crush them all. The warriors are terrified, but they hold their ground, knowing that retreat means the end of everything. Sion calls them fools, just garbage clinging to their social ranks. He questions how they could ever dare to resist true power like his. It's over, he's going to wipe every single one of them from existence. But Lan braces himself, calls out Sion's name and dashes forward. He vows that the Demon King's unforgivable actions end here and now. Okay, I know what you're thinking. And yeah, Lan just casually slices through a golem's hand. Simon is completely stunned, an elite golem taken down in a single strike. And in that moment, he finally understands why he could never conquer the Livia Kingdom. It was all because of this one man. The two heroes glare at each other, fire in their eyes. Both scream at the same time, "You die here today." Hours pass, the battlefield is littered with the dead and only a single golem remains. Lan, breathing heavily, tells Simon it's time to put an end to this. He faces the last golem and moments later, it shatters into a million pieces. Only Sion is left standing, he calls out to an exhausted Lan. As Lan raises his sword for the final blow, Sion stops him. "You don't understand," he says, and Lan actually pauses. Sion tells him the world is rotten to the core and that he could have destroyed it all. Lan is shocked to see tears streaming down the Demon King's face. Then Sion curses him, vowing that his entire bloodline will live in endless suffering. You and I just witnessed a curse that will echo through generations, as Lan ends it all in one swift strike. Fading memories of Katarina fill his mind. Trust me, this is where his old life ends. He remembers her asking if he knew how happy she was when he smiled. In the memory, she reaches for his face, kisses him deeply on the lips. She tells him she loves him, and then Simon jolts awake, gasping for air. He clutches his neck, completely bewildered. Was that all just a dream? His head is still intact, but feeling a little dizzy, he checks his hands. No wounds, not a single scratch. He wonders how this is even possible. Looking around the strange room, he knows he's never seen this place before. Is he in some foreign country? How is he still alive? He knows for a fact that not even black magic can bring someone back from the dead. If it could, he would have done it himself. His gaze lands on a portrait. And his heart stops. He recognizes it instantly. It's a portrait of Lon. Just then the door opens and a butler steps inside, calling him young lord. The butler freezes, absolutely shocked to see Seaman awake, and rushes forward. He throws his arms around him, exclaiming that after 2 weeks without waking up, they thought they had lost him for good. Seaman just stares, totally confused. He asks what he means by young lord and who he even is. The butler's face drains of all color. He anxiously asks if he truly doesn't recognize him. Kneeling in despair, the butler cries out that the accident must have damaged his memories. He blames himself, sobbing that it was his own failure to protect him. The butler then stands, trying to pull himself together for Seaman's sake. He suggests the memory loss might just be temporary, maybe things will come back. Then with trembling sincerity, the butler reveals a truth that changes everything. Watch this. He explains that Seaman is the one who will soon become the lord of this estate. He is the successor to the land viscounty of the Baroque Empire, and a descendant of the great hero Lon-Luc de Lon. Seaman is absolutely stunned into silence. He collapses onto the bed in shock. Lon died 500 years ago. This means he's been reincarnated as Lon's descendant, 500 years into the future. For a moment he's speechless, then he just bolts, shocking the butler. The butler yells that he shouldn't be moving around in his condition. But he doesn't listen. He sprints toward the balcony door, his mind racing. Do they really expect him to believe this insane story? Do they take him for a fool? None of it adds up. He grabs the handle and throws the door open. He screams in pure frustration that it just doesn't make any sense, but then he freezes. Before him stands a massive suit of armor, staring him down in silence. Staring at it, he starts to realize if this thing is real, then everything the butler said must be true. He studies the machine. It's leagues more advanced than the Golem magic he was familiar with. A weapon of this level, something he had only dreamed of, is standing right there. The butler calls out his name in concern, but he's completely ignored. Instead, he just asks for the butler's name. He introduces himself as Hans, his personal servant. Seaman then asks what that machine is. Hans explains it's called a gigant. A bipedal humanoid weapon. Seaman asks if it's based on Golem magic. Hans replies that he's on the right track, but it's much more than that. And here's the kicker, a gigant, he says, is made by combining science, hextech, and magic. All right, you and I are about to get a crash course in this world's killer tech. See, Gigants are piloted by individuals directly inside of them. Seaman confirms this with Hans, who just nods. And it hits him, the level of technology to make this happen must be absolutely insane. If Hans is telling the truth, these Gants are incredible weapons. They offer total protection and react way faster than any remote-controlled golem. He realizes they solve every single problem he ever had with his own golems. Pacing the room, Seaman is completely lost in his own thoughts, confusing Hans. Then he stops dead in his tracks. If this tech is real, it could only mean one thing: 500 years had actually passed. He stares at his hands, disgusted. Why was he reborn as his worst enemy's descendant? A second later, Hans yells his name. Seaman is chugging alcohol. Hans rushes over, begging him to calm down and take care of his body. With a cold glare, Seaman asks him if it's true. Is he really a descendant of Lan? Hans says yes. Seaman then screams if he's the descendant of a great hero. Why is he in so much pain? He doubles over, clutching the table and cursing, demanding to know what's wrong with him. Hans, looking terrified, admits he tried to warn him. It's the curse. Seaman freezes, and here's the part that changes absolutely everything. He asks what curse Hans is talking about, who realizes he truly has no memory. Hans starts telling the story of Lan's battle, but Seaman cuts him off. Get to the point, so Hans does. Lan was a hero praised by all. But he died young because of the Demon Lord's curse. Seaman's mind is reeling. Could it be true? And then a memory hits him, the moment he cursed Lan himself. He remembers screaming that his entire bloodline should suffer for all eternity. He slaps his forehead. It was something he just yelled out in a moment of pure rage. So 500 years ago, the world was on the brink of total annihilation. Let me show you. The Demon Lord's dark magic could summon golems stronger than any army. Countless soldiers were wiped out with just a flick of his wrist. The world was basically doomed, but then the righteous warrior Lan appeared. And peace was restored, but not before the Demon Lord cast one final curse. A curse on Lan and all his descendants, ensuring they would all die young and in agony. Seaman slams the history book shut, rage boiling inside him. He mutters that they twisted the story any way they wanted. He knows he never even cast a proper curse to begin with. Do people really believe a simple curse could last 500 years? He sighs it was his fault for losing in the first place. But being reborn as his enemy's descendant, it felt like he was the one who was truly cursed. He grabs another book off the shelf and sits down, thinking hard. He realizes this is it, his second chance, a shot to finish what he started. He couldn't face Katarina again if he wasted this incredible opportunity. He thinks about the world, which has been rotting for another 500 years. If anything, it's probably even more corrupt than before. But he feels certain his followers couldn't have all been wiped out. He decides to learn everything he can. If he finds them, he'll change the world. The next day, he's still stuck in the library. Frustrated, he throws a book to the ground. Taking a hard swig of alcohol, he curses his followers, absolutely enraged. And here's the part that really stings. People have almost completely forgotten the Demon Lord even existed. He gets to his feet, muttering that it's too much, even after 500 years have passed. He laments that there's not even a single trace of his legacy left in this world. Feeling dizzy, he admits his new body is weak, with no mana and no stamina. He's left wondering what he can possibly do in a state like this. Suddenly, a sharp pain shoots through his ankle, making him trip and slam his head on the floor. Sighing, he clenches his fists, asking himself what he's supposed to do now. His thoughts drift to Katarina, and he sadly wonders if he was just doomed from the start. All he ever wanted, he thinks, was to create a world where everyone could be equal and happy. Was that really too much to ask? Suddenly, a loud voice cuts through the silence. Someone is calling his name from outside. Confused, he peeks through the window. He sees a man shouting, demanding to know how much longer he plans on hiding. And get this, the man declares that the merchants aren't taking a single step back. Not until they get a direct audience with the young master of the house. The man introduces himself. He's Darren, the branch master of the Allen Merchant Association. Sion just chuckles. Looks like Lan's descendant is having a pretty rough time. He can't help but wonder, is the kid in some kind of debt? Darren shouts that the young master owes them 30,000 pesos, borrowed last year to develop a mine. He accuses him of dodging the repayment ever since and demands to know if he'll pay it back. The guy sounds desperate, shouting that he can't live like this anymore. Just then, Hans appears, trying to calm things down, explaining the situation to Darren. He says the young master is unwell and needs his rest, but promises they will find a way. Hans politely asks Darren to just come back another time and give them some space. But Darren, he flat out refuses, insisting he needs to hear it from the young master himself. His firm words silence the entire courtyard. The tension is thick. Seeing their reaction, Darren smugly suggests they obviously don't have the money. So he offers them another way out, just hand over the gigant in their possession. He notes that since the gigant is second-hand, it's probably not even worth the full amount. He claims this is a generous offer, a way for them to settle the 30,000 peso debt. The Knight Commander, Roger, roars that such a thing is absolutely impossible. Roger angrily points out they only have 3 gigants for the entire household. How are they supposed to defend their territory without them? He's absolutely furious. He declares he would rather die than let them take the gigants, which are vital to their defense. Hans tries to calm Roger down, assuring him that it won't come to that. But then the accountant Dixon suggests they just raise taxes temporarily instead. Hans explodes, asking Dixon if he has any idea how badly the people are already suffering. He screams that they can't possibly burden the few people they have left with even higher taxes. Dixon stammers back that their only real option is to just hand over the gigant. This makes Roger lose it, and he shouts again that it is completely out of the question. Now you and I see this total chaos unfolding, but Simon, He's just listening in, laughing to himself. He finds the whole situation ironic, thinking what a great household this has become. He thinks that his old subordinate, Lon, really should have seen this mess for himself. Darren cuts through the argument, telling everyone to just take it easy for a second. But he claims they're not the kind of merchants who would just take from the house of a great hero. At least that's what he says with a perfectly calm look on his face. And here's the play. Darren points right toward the gigant, and Roger, seething with rage, asks him if he's joking, demanding to know how many times he has to repeat himself. They are not giving up the gigant, but Darren just smiles, clarifying his point. He wasn't aiming for the gigant. No, trust me, he was pointing at the magic tower right behind it. Everyone freezes in total shock. Roger breaks the silence, admitting the magic tower might actually be a better deal than the gigant. Hans reluctantly agrees. I mean, no one even uses that old tower anymore. Dixon then chimes in. He says the tower made a little money once as a tourist spot, but it's been useless for years. Some people even believe the tower is the source of the local curse. Listening in, Seaman's expression turns dark, and yeah, you're about to see why. He curses Lon under his breath, furious. That magic tower, it was his. He can't believe Lon built his manor on the exact spot where he defeated him 500 years ago, where the Demon King's tower now stands. Seaman's real home was far from there, an old, worn-down house. But it was their cozy little sanctuary, where he and Katarina dreamed of a better future. So when Seaman hears Darren say the land around the Demon Tower has crossed into their company's territory, his rage boils over. How dare they even think about touching that place? Darren just laughs, telling his men not to worry. With their company's capabilities, he's sure they can turn it into a massive tourist attraction, boosting the local economy. Hans and Roger stay quiet, lost in thought. Dixon is already asking Darren where to sign the papers, but the conversation stops cold. Interrupted by an overwhelming presence. They turn, and you and I both knew it was coming. Seaman is storming out. The anger is practically rolling off of him. Hans rushes over, asking if he's okay to be walking around in his condition, but Seaman curtly orders them to step aside. Darren greets him with a sly grin, saying how hard it was to get a meeting. He asks if Seaman's already recovered from his injuries. He explains the talks with his vassals were going great, and all that's left is Seaman's signature to give their company management of the Demon Tower. But Seaman cuts him off cold, asking if talking is the only thing Darren knows how to do. Darren, confused, asks what he means, but Seaman isn't done. He demands to know if Darren has any idea what that place truly is, and how he dares to even try and take control of it. Darren and his knights begin to tremble, completely unsettled by Seaman's fierce aura. This was not the weak man they had heard about. Darren hesitates, trying to save face. He tells Seaman their company was being considerate of his situation. But if he keeps talking like this, they'll just withdraw their generous proposal. Seaman scoffs, calls him a conman, and tells him to zip it. He states plainly that he knows their true intentions. First, they take the land. That's right at the center of his territory, near the main estate. Then they would use the excuse of development to slowly expand their influence and authority. He then looks him dead in the eye and asks if he got anything wrong. Darren, shocked, stammers that his accusations are completely crazy, but Seaman just dismisses him. Company was so pathetic they couldn't even sell second-hand weapons. He tells them their little territory takeover attempt was a step too far. Sion declares that while he hates incompetence, there's one thing he hates even more. And that's people who are just rotten to the core. Realizing he's losing, Darren panics. He can't let Sion have the last word. Summoning his courage, Darren screams back. He shouts that the Lan household couldn't pay its debts, which is why they came up with such a generous offer. I mean, the company had to get its money back somehow. Sion's eyes narrow, his voice drops, dripping with anger. Who said we aren't repaying our debt? And here's the bombshell you're not ready for. In 10 days we'll repay everything, principal and interest. Then he tells Darren to get lost. He unleashes a crushing aura, leaving the knights stunned and paralyzed with fear. Darren just hiccups, scrambling back in a total panic with his men. As they flee, he yells back, saying we'll see if Sion can actually back up those big words. Fuming, Sion mutters to himself that guys like Darren are all the same. But behind him, Roger calls out, absolutely floored by what he just heard. Sion turns, confused, asking what the hell he's talking about. And to his shock, all his vassals place their hands on their chests. A pledge, they shout that they're deeply moved by his declaration. Hands, practically vibrating with excitement, praises Sion's genius insight. He says Sion saw right through all of Darren's schemes. Roger agrees, adding that Sion's fury to protect their ancestors' honor was truly inspiring. Sion just blinks. Completely baffled, he has no idea what on earth they're on about. Roger just smiles, telling Sion he didn't realize how much pride he took in their household. He even remarks on how that merchant bastard Darren was completely shut down. Totally owned by Sion's fierce comeback, Roger then says that in that moment, he saw the image of their great ancestor, the hero Lan, inside of Sion. And Sion, he's furious, internally screaming that these idiots are trying to make him the demon king again. But he forces himself to take a deep breath and calm down. Just then, Hans approaches and asks how he plans to repay that massive debt. Sion flips the question, asking Hans how much 30,000 pesos is really worth. Hans explains it could buy 10,000 sacks of wheat, or a single brand new warrior-class Gant. He adds that they have no collateral for a loan from a bank or anyone else. So did he have another plan? Sion just scoffs at Hans's useless suggestions. He tells him to step aside, declaring he'll repay the debt his own way. He orders Hans to just stay put and watch him work. He then makes his way back to the archives and a little later starts his inspection. The household's assets, its facilities, the food supplies, all of it. And finds nothing, it's all completely empty. Frustrated, he slams the papers on the floor. He yells at Hans, asking if this isn't the family that killed the Demon King. So why is nothing left? Did someone steal everything? Hans, visibly shaken, promises him nothing was stolen. He begs his master not to say things like that. He explains that Sion would understand if he just looked at the family genealogy. Sion scoffs, asking if Hans seriously expects him to read something like that. Hans keeps explaining that after the hero Lan killed the Demon King, he was rewarded. He was given the title of Marquis and a huge territory in the southern Livia kingdom. So Simon asks what happened, and Hans lays out a tragic history you need to hear. A rebellion against the kingdom. Leon, unable to stand the injustice, fought back. But he was under the Demon King's curse and suffered a devastating defeat. After the rebellion, Leon's title was stripped away and he was exiled. He was sent to the borders of the kingdom, where his health failed and he eventually died. Simon realized his ancestor hadn't just randomly chosen to settle his estate there. He pointed out that the household's financial situation was an absolute mess. So dire, in fact, that it was a miracle they had managed to survive 500 years. He asked Hans how things got this bad, and the butler let out a deep sigh. It was all because their ancestors clung to the desperate hope of one day regaining the household's former glory. Simon asked what Hans meant by that. Hans explained that for the sake of a comeback, his ancestors were willing to do anything. And that meant burning through all of their assets, authority, and every last resource. He continued, saying they desperately wanted to recover the family's reputation. But because of the generational curse passed down through the bloodline, no matter how hard they worked, their efforts were always in vain, and you can probably guess what happened. This, he said, was how the home of a world-saving hero completely fell into ruin. Hans hesitated for a moment, then added something even more personal. He wasn't sure if Simon remembered, but the reason he had been unconscious for more than half a month was because of the Jant incident. Simon had worked himself to the bone to restore the household's reputation. He was trying to prove he had a hero's qualities, but he pushed himself way too hard. In the end, he collapsed from pure exhaustion, leaving Simon absolutely speechless. Slowly, he rose from his chair and walked to the window, just staring out. He quietly told Hans that given their situation, there was nothing they could do. Filled with regret, Hans sadly replied that even as the family's butler, there was nothing he could do to help the situation either. He apologized from the bottom of his heart as Simon just kept looking outside. Hans tried to comfort him, insisting there had to be something they could do. He swore that even if it cost him his life, he'd find a way to raise the money. But Simon turned to Hans, a faint smile on his face. He reassured him that wouldn't be necessary, he had just thought of something. Hans just looked back confused as Simon asked him a serious question. Was it true they just needed to pay the money back, somehow? Hans got that sinking feeling, yeah, we all know what that means, right? The next day, Hans and the other members of the household stood frozen. Roger, with tears streaming down his face, demanded to know how this could happen. Hans's mind raced when the young master said he'd repay the money. He never in a million years imagined he meant selling the statue of Leon. No one could believe it. The statue, the very pillar of their entire family, was gone. Cries of despair filled the air as everyone prayed this was a nightmare. Hans knew for a fact that Leon's statue had been there just yesterday. He wondered where it could be but quickly pushed the thought aside. Finding Simon was more important. Just then one of the knights ran up panicking, shouting, "We have a problem. Trust me, everything's about to pop off." He stammers out a question, then immediately screams that it doesn't matter. All that matters right now is finding out where Simon went. The knight, just as flustered, says he thought Simon left when security was down. Hearing this, Hans just collapses to his knees, completely crushed. He screams, asking what in the world their young lord is planning. Meanwhile, Simon is in a carriage with the statue of Lorne. The driver glances back. He asks if he can pose a question, and Simon agrees, asking who he is. The driver laughs awkwardly, asking if Simon has already forgotten him. He introduces himself as Philip, Simon's personal guard knight. Philip hesitates for a moment, but finally asks if Simon really plans to do it. Is he actually going to sell the statue? Simon just says yes. He figures it should be worth a pretty penny if they melt it down. Horrified, Philip reminds him that the statue holds 500 years of history. Simon just lifts his foot, a clear threat that makes Philip flinch back in fear. He asks Philip if those 5 centuries of history have ever put food on his table. Philip protests, saying selling it won't even be enough to cover their debts. But Simon assures him this statue is just a small part of the real plan. Relieved, Philip says everyone will understand as long as the debts are paid. He asks what the plan is, and Simon's reply, "You're not gonna believe this." He's going to use the money to gamble and win the 30,000 pesos they owe. Philip is so shocked he slams on the brakes, screaming, "What? What happens if he loses all the money instead?" Simon just scoffs. Why did Philip even come along if he was just going to lecture him? Philip reminds him that Simon was the one who dragged him out at dawn. If he'd known this was the plan, he would have never left the castle. He nervously begs to turn back now, to ask for forgiveness and make a new plan. Simon just calls him an idiot, pointing out the obvious flaw. If they go back, he'll have to explain why he stole the great predecessor's statue. And when he admits it was to get cash for gambling, yeah, that's not gonna fly. He's certain they would expel him from the family for good if he went back now. Philip is stunned speechless, but Simon keeps going, twisting the knife. He speculates that maybe they can't expel him since he's still the heir. "Okay, I know what you're thinking," and yes, he goes there. He says they'll punish Philip instead. Philip starts shaking as Simon lays out the choice with a twisted smile. What's the better option for him? What's his best move here? Become a broke nobody on the streets, or a hero who saved the family name? He orders Philip to decide. Stuttering, Philip says they'll keep going. Simon just laughs, praises his knight, and tells him it's time to roll the dice. Under his breath, Philip is cursing. He'd heard the rumors, of course. That Simon's personality changed after the coma, but this is something else. He thinks Simon has become the devil himself. Later, they finally reach the docks. The captain is shouting, they've only got 5 minutes until the ship leaves. Philip hesitates again, asking if they're really doing this. Simon just fires back, asking if he'd rather just turn around and go home. Stammering, Philip gives in. They board the boat and the captain rings the bell. The horn blows, signaling their departure as the boat begins its journey to a new city. That night, they reach the harbor city of Lamer and immediately get to selling that historical statue. Leon's statue is sold. Philip handles the cash but questions the buyer, asking if that's really it. I mean, for a statue this important, he can't believe the low price. He reminds the man this is the hero who saved the entire world we're talking about. The buyer just scoffs, saying he'd go out of business if he paid a cent more. Simon orders Philip to lead the way, and as they leave, Philip grumbles under his breath. He insists they could have gotten way more, but Simon just brushes him off. He says it's good enough, then looks around, noticing how much Lamer has changed. Philip asks if he's been here before, and Simon confirms that he has. It was a brief visit, and he says it looked nothing like this back then. He explains that years ago, a massive kraken made reaching Lamer nearly impossible. The place was basically just a deserted island. It really sinks in for him. It's been 500 years. He remarks that coming here was actually a pretty good idea. Philip gets excited, thanking him and saying it's been a while, hasn't it? He tells Simon that the Lamer he remembers is long gone. The city is totally different now. He explains it's now the second largest city in the Empire's entire southern region. It's constantly growing and changing. He repeats how it used to be an unreachable island. The Kraken and other sea monsters made it a no-go zone for anyone. But thanks to advances in magical engineering, the whole area is now thriving with people. Philip then brings up the obvious. With more people comes a huge gambling scene. He nervously asks if Simon is really confident about this, and I gotta admit, I'm wondering the same thing. Simon just scoffs. If he wasn't confident, he says, he never would have come. Moments later, they're standing in front of a massive gambling hall. Simon says, let's head in. But Philip yells for him to wait, saying he needs a moment to take a few deep breaths. Simon asks him what he's so scared of, Philip, still shaking in his boots. Asks how he can be so calm and if he even knows how to win at these games. Simon coolly replies that he's got a plan, reminding Philip that when it comes to gambling, attitude is everything. Fast forward a few minutes and Simon is at a card table. His opponent smirks, pointing out that things aren't exactly looking good for him. He laughs while announcing another win. The opponent asks if Simon wants to keep playing. Our guy is just sweating buckets, completely speechless with worry as he watches his money vanish. His opponent just laughs again, saying Lady Luck is clearly on his side today. Simon says it's fine, claiming that having good sense is also a part of luck. This just makes the other guy laugh even harder, calling him generous for the compliment. He says it's an honor to play with someone as cool as Simon, but then he notices something. Simon is out of coins. He suggests they just end the game right there. But Simon confidently tells him they can keep going, ordering Philip to exchange all their money. Philip protests, shouting that they can't risk it. Okay, you and I both know this is insane. If they lose this, it is game over, but Simon just snaps back at him. Bring me the coins, he orders. The opponent watches all this, thinking Simon's just desperate. He figures the guy is agitated, while his own luck feels absolutely unbeatable today. Simon dumps every last coin onto the table, declaring he's betting his entire fortune. All in, Philip just watches in horror, thinking the family is officially doomed. The opponent asks if he's serious, admitting even he's getting nervous now. And trust me, this next hand changes everything. Even though it's his first time playing such a high-stakes game, Simon says he's got this. He calmly replies that being anxious isn't going to change the results. The opponent signals to the woman behind him, praising Simon for his incredible composure. He asks if it's time to reveal their hands, looking way too confident. He slams down a 888, shouting that the goddess of luck is smiling on him. As he reaches to collect the coins, Simon stops him. Now hold on, this is where it gets good. He reminds the guy they haven't seen his cards yet, laying down an ace, king, and queen. A royal flush. Simon tells his opponent that, surprisingly, he had these the whole time. The guy is absolutely stunned, yelling that it makes no sense. Simon just smirks, asking if sudden reversals aren't the whole joy of gambling. He reaches out to shake the man's hand, calling it one hell of a match. Philip just bursts into tears of relief, shouting that he always believed in Simon. But suddenly the opponent slams his fist on the table, absolutely furious. He accuses Simon of cheating, claiming there's no way he got those cards fair and square. Simon calmly asks if he means having people signal his cards from behind him. The opponent freezes in pure shock. I know what you're thinking, how did Simon know? Simon points out that all the nearby spectators are the opponent's men, secretly passing cards. He explains that he figured out their little scheme right from the start and marked the cards. With his experience controlling a golem army, manipulating cards with mana was child's play. He finishes by saying that for someone with his level of control, it's easy. Switching cards is a trivial task, letting him win without any fancy tricks. Simon tells the guy to just admit he lost and pay up. But the opponent declares that business is over, signaling his men to attack. His goons draw their weapons and Simon sighs, completely unimpressed. He mutters about how people haven't changed in 500 years. Gathering magic in his hand, he basically tells them to bring it on. As the men rush him, Philip screams for Simon to duck, then swiftly slashes the attackers. Philip then roars, asking how they dared to draw swords against the sole heir of the Ilkin family. He warns them that an act like this means they're ready to throw their lives away. The opponent, now completely terrified, admits he was wrong and begs for his life. Philip, still enraged, shouts at him to shut up, demanding to know how he dared to harm Simon. Simon watches, genuinely amazed, as Philip effortlessly mops the floor with these guys. He thinks to himself that maybe this Philip kid isn't so bad after all. Later, Philip is hauling a massive bag of money, complaining about how heavy it is. He figures it's got to be more than 10,000 pesos. Simon just agrees. Glancing back, he thinks that he once saw Philip as just a porter, but he's way more talented. He reflects that the day's earnings were pretty good for a first attempt. But he knows that causing a scene at one gambling den will make it harder to visit others. He asks Philip if there are any other ways to make some quick cash. Philip thinks for a second, then suggests the Gigant Arena. Simon, curious, asks what that is, and Philip is happy to explain. He says they're just like the old human combat arenas, but these feature giant robots fighting. Depending on the match, the payouts can be huge, sometimes 30,000 pesos or more. Intrigued, Simon considers it. He suspects these giants are built with Golem magic. He figures this might help him predict the outcomes, and you and I both know where this is headed. Stick with me here, Philip says to trust him. He was a top student at the Imperial Military Academy. San just nods and tells Philip to lead the way. That's all the encouragement Philip needs, cheering and demanding more credit as they go. But then they hear it, knights, and the sickening sound of someone getting beaten. They're shouting at their victim to stay in his place, a little kid. Kicking him, saying he'll only listen once he's dead, and Philip, he is furious. Seeing knights abuse a young child like this, he clenches his teeth in pure rage. He can't believe it. 500 years have passed and some things have only gotten more rotten. He's about to jump in and yell at them to stop, but watch this, a voice cuts him off. A woman's voice commands the knights to stop. Immediately, they turn around annoyed. Demanding to know who she thinks she is, the woman steps forward. She asks if they aren't the royal guard, the ones sworn to protect the people. She tears into them for beating a child, asking if only nobles deserve protection. Simon just stands there frozen, absolutely shocked to see her. Because that woman, she looks exactly like Katarina, we both know that face. She keeps yelling that even children have the right to be protected. The knights are just stunned. They tell her even if she is a princess, there's no point in fighting this. The count himself gave the order. They ask if she gets how tense things are getting. The city is on edge because of all the refugees, but she fires right back. She asks if they really think locking people up like cattle is the right solution. Treating them in ways unfit for any living being, their jaws drop. She steps closer. She addresses the knights directly, declaring that these are innocent people. Children who have lost their nation, their families, and if anyone is guilty. She says she should be the first one to bear that blame. Her voice rings out. She proclaims that before she was a princess of the Volga kingdom. She was one of the refugees seeking exile. One of the knights has had enough. He tells her this defiance is only going to cause more trouble for everyone. It's not what they want to do, he insists, they're just following the count's orders. Philip sees things escalating and whispers that this is getting really serious. He asks if they should step in, but our hero just has one simple question. He asks Philip, do you know who that woman is? And Philip confirms that he does. That, he explains, is Princess Reina of the Volga Kingdom, and she's apparently famous. Famous for ignoring all the noble rules and always standing up for the common folk. Philip admits he doesn't know much more, just that her entire kingdom fell to ruin. And he definitely never expected to run into her in a place like this. Reina, the name just confuses him more, because no matter how he looks at her. That is unmistakably Katarina. He wonders if she also reincarnated just like him. How could she look exactly the same after all this time? Then the knights grab her. They seize Reyna, apologizing, but saying they can't let her interfere any longer. If they let her defiance go unpunished, they'll be the ones in trouble later. One knight starts dragging her away while another one holds back the child. Reyna screams at them, demanding to know what they are doing. The knights just yell back, telling her to stop interfering. Her cry of pain pierces the air, and trust me, that was their final mistake. He snaps, his fist flies toward the knight as he roars for him to get his filthy hands off her. He hammers the knight again and again, completely consumed by an uncontrollable rage. That even after all this time, no matter how the world changed, scum like this would never truly disappear. Reyna grabbed his arm, begging him to stop. She told him there was no need to go this far, and he paused, realizing what he was doing. Just then another knight appeared, sword drawn, calling him a fool. He demanded to know how he dared to attack a guard, accusing him of breaking imperial law. But Philip stepped in, pointing his blade at the knight's throat, asking if imperial law really mattered more than a person's life. The knight cursed Philip, calling him a bastard before retreating with his men, shouting that they'd regret this. Philip turned to Sean, urging him that this wasn't the time to go to the Jejin arena. He suggested they leave before things got any worse, but Sean wasn't listening. He ignored Philip's plea, rushing to Reyna's side and calling her Katarina. He knelt beside her, worriedly asking if she was hurt and apologizing for losing control. But Reyna, trembling with fear, apologized to him instead. With wide, confused eyes, she asked him who he was, and just like that, his whole world came crashing down. He stammered, asking what she meant, but she just fearfully shouted at him not to come any closer. He tried to explain that he might look different, that she might not recognize him, but he could tell her everything. She cut him off. She said it wasn't necessary, and asked what the real difference was between him and the guards who were just abusing those children. He tried to answer, but she cut him off again, telling him he must be mistaking her for someone else. She insisted her name wasn't Katarina, it was Reyna. Philip quickly rushed over, trying to de-escalate the whole disaster. He apologized to Reyna, explaining that his friend Sean had clearly made a terrible mistake. He assured her that they weren't suspicious people and started trying to explain the situation. Meanwhile, Sean just stared down at his own hands, a wave of sadness washing over him. He remembered all those countless hours of solitude, holding on to the one fact that she would never come back. And now he felt like he'd completely fallen apart just because this woman resembled her. Suddenly, someone called out to Reyna. It was a man, her butler Victor, who demanded to know what she was doing. Victor sternly reminded her that she had something important scheduled for the day, and asked if she knew how incredibly difficult it had been just to find her. Reyna started to explain, but Victor angrily cut her off, asking if she'd been fighting with the guards again. He then turned his cold gaze to Sean and Philip, demanding to know who they were. Victor introduced himself, stating this was their first meeting and apologizing for the tense atmosphere. With a fake smile, he politely asked them to refrain from getting too close to the princess. Sean just scoffed, calling them all stupid. He turned back to Reyna and told her that while yes, he had misunderstood and yeah, he escalated the situation, the fact was he still helped her. He added that he didn't do it expecting a reward, but a simple thank you would have been nice. His words left her absolutely speechless. And honestly, what do you even say to that? He turned to Philip, said it was time to go, and walked away. Seeing this, Victor told Reyna they should leave as well. She nodded, but as they left, she realized she never actually thanked him. Later, they finally arrived at the Jejin arena, where the host announced an intense match was already underway. Sean and Philip found a couple of seats with a perfect view. Sean watched the match below, confidently predicting how it would all end. And just like that, one of the giants hits the floor as the host declares the winner. The crowd erupts into cheers. Philip turns to Simon, absolutely pumped. He yells that the prediction was dead on. At this rate, they can pay off all their debts. And maybe even get filthy rich, but Simon just thinks to himself that it's all too easy. He figures the giants, being based on Golem magic, reveal the flow of their mana. It's a current he can easily read to see the outcome of any fight before it even starts. The hosts then amp up the crowd for the next match, promising it's going to be a bloodbath. The fighters are announced, Savage versus Sting. Philip is sure he knows who'll win. Now pay attention, because the odds on this next match are absolutely insane. How could Sting, with 1 win and 5 losses, ever beat Savage, who has 28 wins and only 2 losses? He tells Philip that winning against such a huge power gap is possible, but this match looks pretty straightforward. The host then directs everyone's eyes to the 2 colossal axes Savage is carrying. He boasts that not a single giant has ever been able to withstand a direct hit from them. He introduces the dual-axe-wielding monster, Savage, and its rider, Brian. Then he calls out Savage's opponent, a machine that somehow pulled off a miracle victory last time. It was a lucky shot that got everyone's attention. He introduces the underdog, Sting. Philip immediately calls it a pity. Sure, Sting got a lucky win before. But now he's facing an absolute monster, as he watches Sting and its rider Karen walk onto the stage. A small smile creeps across Simon's face. He turns to Philip with an order. Go all in on Sting. Philip is floored, asking him what he's even saying. Savage is the guaranteed winner of this match, but Simon calmly replies. I wonder, because from here I can see a different victor. The battle begins. Savage takes a massive swing at Sting, but he actually blocks it. Seeing Sting fight back, the host stutters, asking what is going on. He announces that Sting is putting on a completely unexpected show for the crowd. Everyone's expectations of a brutal, one-sided beatdown are shattered as Sting and Karen block every attack. Brian just laughs, telling Karen he thought she was an amateur, but she's got some skill. But then he sneers, saying it's still not good enough to satisfy him. Savage raises both of its enormous axes and brings them down with incredible force. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, it's over, right? Well, it's not even close. Philip is panicking, but Simon stays completely silent. He can see that Sting has the advantage in mana flow. He wonders what they're planning, because they clearly aren't using their full power. Brian laughs, telling Karen to get up since Sting's legs are still attached. If she can't fight anymore, the only thing he can offer her is more destruction. Savage raises both axes again, and Philip starts panicking, shouting, and rolling around. He's screaming that at this rate, they're going to lose every last bit of their money. Savage swings his axes down on Sting, but that's the moment Karen finally activates her mana. The impact shatters the arena floor, but Brian is in absolute shock. Because in the smoke, Sting has vanished, and then he reappears from directly above. Karen calmly asks Brian if he's aware that bets get locked in exactly 30 seconds into a match. She tells him that time frame just passed, which means she no longer has to hold back. Karen unleashes her true magic power, channeling a devastating spell through Sting. A massive blast of fire erupts, attacking Savage with overwhelming force. The hosts are in shock, shouting about how this could even be possible, an unprecedented event. And with that, you and I just witnessed the new champion who crushed impossible 20-to-1 odds. Sting raises one hand in victory, and Philip absolutely loses his mind, screaming with joy. He swears up and down that he believed in him the entire time. But our guy is just stunned, thinking there's no way they actually used magic. Philip, totally confused, explains that Sting's rider, Karen, must have been a rune knight. He says while it's rare to see giants using magic, they were probably hiding their true power. They must have been trying to pump up the betting odds. But our main character knows that's not the important part. Now pay attention here, because the theory of channeling magic through weapons. He's the one who developed it, a method that no one should ever be able to copy. Why? Because he perfected that technique using forbidden black magic. Later, inside the hangar, Philip wonders why they came here instead of celebrating. But our guy stays dead silent, completely lost in thought. Philip asks again if they should head back, which makes him snap and yell at Philip to shut it. Suddenly, they overhear Victor's voice, pleading with someone nearby. He's telling a woman she can still back out of a crazy, dangerous match. Victor insists this isn't a fight that Princess Reina should have ever agreed to. But she's firm, saying a mercenary like Andre is more than capable. She's sure he can pilot the mirror and take down the Count's giant without a problem. Philip points out that it's Princess Reina again, and it looks like she's in deep trouble. Victor begs Reina, asking why she agreed to such a reckless duel. He reminds her that a loss means she has to marry the Count. But Reina stands her ground, saying she made her choice with her eyes open. If she hadn't accepted the duel, countless refugees would have starved to death. To save her people, this was the only option she had left. Victor can't believe it, shouting that sacrificing her own future isn't a solution. He points out her giant is practically falling to pieces. She's guaranteed to lose. He accuses her of being so focused on protecting others that she's forgotten herself. Why isn't she trying to protect her own life, her own future? And I know what you're thinking, is our guy just gonna stand there and do nothing? He tells Philip they're finished here and turns to leave the hangar. He repeats to himself that this girl, Reina, isn't Katarina. It's not his problem. But he can't help but overhear Victor tell Reina she's basically selling herself. That the Count is a monster who will stop at nothing to get what he wants. A mechanic chimes in, reminding her the Count has threatened the refugees before. Without her protection, those people will truly have no one left to defend them. He adds that unless she completely replaces the Mana Stone, the giant won't even move. And even if they did, the power gap is just way too massive. Her machine is hopelessly outclassed by Count Munox's state-of-the-art giant. He begs her to listen to reason, to listen to her butler. She knows all this, but she refuses to just give up without a fight. She asks if she backs down now, who will be left to stand up for the weak. And in that exact moment, he walks toward them and asks if he can take a look. He calmly tells a shocked Reina that he thinks the Mana Stone can still be used. Victor immediately jumps in front of the princess, telling her to stay back. He glares at our hero, accusing him of showing up at a time that's way too convenient. Alright, let's jump right back in, where our guy is being accused of being an assassin for Count Monok. Victor snaps back that he's getting on his last nerve, but Philip just laughs it off. He tells Victor to sheath his sword, introducing him as Luc de Leon, the 15th descendant. And the current lord of the Leon family, but Victor is still not convinced. He asks how they could possibly trust his words. That's when Reina tells Victor to stand down. She walks closer to them, making Victor break out in a nervous sweat as she apologizes. She's embarrassed to admit it, but they really had no other options left. She adds that if it's not too much trouble, she'd like to ask him for one more favor. She literally begs him for help, and to everyone's surprise, he simply agrees before pulling out a dagger. He tells her it's to make sure he doesn't make any mistakes this time around. He strolls toward the busted Jant, promising them all that he's about to show off his real skills. The mechanic just sighs, telling Reina that you can't have just anyone working on a Jant. One of the other mechanics adds that this kind of repair work is no simple task. Now pay attention, because there's a reason Jant specialists are called Iron Mages. They start worrying that Simon is just going to damage the Jant even more. Muttering under their breath about how arrogant nobles always think they know everything. That's what sets Philip off. He grabs the two mechanics and asks if they want to make a bet. He furiously wagers 10,000 pesos that his friend can fix the very machine they couldn't. One of the mechanics scoffs, asking why on earth they'd take a ridiculous offer like that. But Philip just smirks, saying they don't have to take it if they're too scared. That was the trigger, scared, the mechanic shouts, demanding he put his money where his mouth is. He yells for Philip to double the stakes because he is absolutely in. Reina then asks Philip if she could ask him something, and he immediately says yes. She points over at Simon and asks if a dagger is the typical tool used to fix Jants. Philip is just as confused until Simon slashes his own palm open. I know, right? Wild. Philip screams his name in a panic, but Simon just cuts him off. He sighs and yells for Philip to just shut up and keep his eyes open. Philip asks what in the world he's planning as Simon places his bleeding hand on the machine. He begins to draw a complex magic circle on its surface using his own blood. After finishing the circle, he casts a spell, causing the Mana Stone to begin glowing. When he sees it light up, he roars for it to rise, and the Jant surges with immense power. 500 years ago, in front of the magic tower, Simon was walking through the wreckage. He saw the destroyed golems scattered all around him, stopping in front of the last one. He asked if they had really fallen to such a sorry state. He then unleashes his dark magic, declaring that they are truly immortal beings. Beings destined to drag their enemies to hell. He orders them to answer his summons again. The destroyed golem on the ground rises in response, its body beginning to restore itself. All thanks to his dark magic. Back in the present, he's awakened the destroyed Jant once more. Philip proudly shouts that it's just as he expected, that he never lost faith in him. Meanwhile, the two mechanics are on the floor, their jaws wide open in utter disbelief. Reina is in total shock, witnessing him do something she thought was completely impossible. And Victor just stares, wondering how in the world Mir is moving again. Reina can't believe Luke revived a dead magic crystal, a kind of magic she never knew existed. She realizes that the entire continent, maybe even the entire world, will be shaken by this event. Philip happily shouts that there's nothing he can't do, and you and I just witnessed history being made. Couldn't saying he'd believe Luke even if he claimed he could build a golem out of rocks. But one of the mechanics explodes, shouting that it's completely impossible. He accuses Luke of pulling some kind of elaborate trick. I mean, a magic circle drawn in blood, you have to admit that just screams black magic. Philip, absolutely furious, steps in, asking if they have the nerve to accuse the heir of the great Iron family of using dark arts. But the mechanic just fires back. No matter how you look at it, he says it's black magic. That's when Luke intervenes. He explains that it's actually a top-secret technique passed down through the Iron family. Something they've kept hidden for nearly 500 years. The mechanic is not buying it. He scoffs, asking what kind of swordsman family would have a secret magic technique. Just then, Reina cuts in, saying that none of this even matters. Even if it was black magic, Luke just saved countless lives. She thanks him sincerely and apologizes for misjudging him during their first meeting. Luke just says it's fine, telling her the misunderstanding was completely natural. Now watch this, he's caught totally off guard as she takes his hand and wipes away the blood. Reina tells him he only got hurt because of her, and insists that he let her treat the wound as a small token of her gratitude. He calmly agrees. If it will put her mind at ease, he says, then she can be his guest, but then someone rushes in. He's in a complete panic, screaming that there's a massive problem. Victor demands to know what's gotten him so worked up. The man stutters, then shouts. Andre is gone, he's not in the waiting room, and they've searched the entire building. Top to bottom, but they can't find him anywhere. Reina is absolutely horrified. Meanwhile, over at Count Monarch's estate, let's see what the villains are up to. A report comes in, they've successfully poached Andre, leaving Princess Reina without a pilot. But the informant hesitates, adding that it seems they somehow managed to repair their giant. The Count is stunned, asking if he wasn't told their mech was completely out of commission. The man confirms that was the case, but explains that it was somehow recently activated. The Count slaps the man, sending him stumbling back as he apologizes over and over. Coldly, Monarch tells him he hates apologies because they're just an admission of failure. The man fearfully begs for another chance, swearing he'll make sure the Count's wishes come true. But Count Monarch just sneers and orders the man to get out, screaming that he's fired. Angrily, Monarch mutters he's lost his appetite. He asks his servants if there are any other variables they missed. One of his men stammers out a no, assuring him there are none. Monarch declares there can't be a single thing left to chance. Not until Princess Reina is completely his. Soon, he vows, everyone will know exactly what kind of man the Master of Monarch truly is. Later at the arena, the host announces the fight between Princess Reina's mayor and Achilles. He tells the audience there's an overwhelming difference in power between the two. The announcer then hypes up Count Monarch's ultimate weapon, Achilles, proclaiming it the champion of the Lamer Fuma, boasting 78 wins and not a single loss. He asks the crowd what Mayor could possibly do against this undefeated champion. But Mayor is nowhere to be seen in the arena. The host asks if they've forfeited the match, and you and I both know something has gone terribly wrong. Okay, let's dive right in. The crowd is absolutely losing it, screaming that Mir chickened out and demanding a refund. And look who's loving every second of it. Monarch just laughs, thinking Reina's team must have given up. Without a pilot, they're dead in the water. He sneers right at Reina. He tells her this is exactly why she should have just quietly accepted his marriage proposal. Now he's going to show her the consequences of bruising his pride. Meanwhile, in the hangar, Reina desperately asks her servant if it's true. Is Andre really gone? The servant confirms it. Andre is nowhere in sight, and he suspects Monarch tricked them. Victor explodes at the servant, insisting Andre is a loyal man. He's a loyal vassal. Are you implying he betrayed us? Victor demands. The servant stammers, explaining that witnesses saw Andre entering the Count's camp. Victor curses. He realizes even without this dirty trick, Monarch's Jant already had a massive strength advantage over theirs. He can't believe Monak would stoop this low, crushing them with underhanded tactics. Not with pure power, Reina just stands there speechless and trembling. He turns to her, asking if it's true that she'll be forced to marry Monak if she can't fight. But pay attention here. Someone steps up, assuring her that if she'll allow it, he can fix this. Stunned, Reina stammers, asking how he could possibly do that. Philip interjects, trying to say that while he doesn't doubt the guy, he hasn't forgotten the accident that happened the last time he tried piloting a jant. But the man calmly tells Philip not to worry, saying operating a jant is a piece of cake. Minutes later, the entire stadium and the host are left absolutely stunned. Mir has entered the arena, and you and I both know this is where the hype begins. The host screams that Mir hasn't given up and arrived just in time to face the undefeated Achilles. The crowd roars, but Monak is shaking with pure rage, demanding to know why. Mir is on that stage. He grabs his servant, questioning him. "Didn't you tell me they had no riders left?" The servant just stammers, insisting he was certain. Monak's mind races. He starts to suspect Reina hired a mercenary. He can't believe it. He's fuming, convinced that whoever is piloting Mir has no idea about the true stakes of this match. He can't fathom how anyone would dare to side with the princess right here in his own territory. Just then, Reina and Victor arrive. She anxiously asks Victor what's going on, and he quickly reassures her. They aren't late. Fortunately, they made it just in time. She breathes a sigh of relief but hesitates, voicing her concern that it's not all right. She points out that just at a glance, the difference between the two machines is insane, and their opponent, he's Lamer Fam's own champion. But Luke appears behind her and tells her it'll be fine. He explains that although their pilot might seem a bit simple-minded, the guy is actually highly skilled. Meanwhile, inside Mir, Philip is silently wondering why his young master would put him in such a messed-up situation. The audience is in shock. They're staring at the destroyed jant, wondering if it can even fight. One of the spectators just laughs, shouting that Mir should have just run. Another fan chimes in, teasing them from the stands. "Are you seriously calling a piece of junk like that a jant? Can it even move?" Achilles' voice booms out, applauding the fact that Mir didn't run away. But he warns that Mir must understand the stakes. And trust me, Achilles is about to lay it all on the line. That he wasn't going easy on him, Philip, piloting Mayer, just fires back. He says Achilles will never know its true strength until he sees it in action. So Achilles unleashes a destructive blow right at Mayer's position. Time to test that confidence, but watch this. Philip dodges the attack clean. He notes Achilles' power is no joke, easily matching its massive size. Seizing an opening, Philip zips behind Achilles and starts taunting him. "Being big and strong doesn't make you a good fighter, you know." Achilles spins. He swings his mace at Mayer, shocking Philip with its incredible speed. Philip barely ducks in time, avoiding the attack by a hair's breadth. Achilles remarks that he dodged, but his confidence is clearly baseless. Meanwhile, Philip knows this is dangerous. He's realizing something. The pilot of Achilles has to be at least an expert-level knight. The announcer shouts that Achilles is unleashing a storm of blows against Mayer. But Mayer just keeps dodging every single attack. Achilles gets frustrated. He launches another assault, but Mayer evades it again. The hosts are shocked. "I know what you're thinking, a quick match. Yeah, that's not happening now." This has turned into a prolonged battle, with Mayer not taking a single hit. Victor curses, shouting that they can't win just by running forever. But Rhea tells him to calm down. Simon said Philip was a strong knight. She tells him they just have to believe. Seaman, however, overhears them. He admits Philip has faced countless knights before, so his skills are proven. Still, Seaman thinks Philip might need a little education after this is over. Why is he fighting like a cornered rat instead of a proper knight? On the other side, Philip is cursing, wondering if Achilles ever gets tired. He stops running, steadies his sword, and mutters a new plan to himself. Time to try a sneak attack. He swings at Achilles and actually lands a hit. Achilles pauses. Philip wonders if it worked, but Achilles just gets angrier. "Are you finally ready to fight seriously?" Philip stammers back, "Not exactly." Achilles raises his weapon, shouting that now he's giving it his all. Witnessing this, the hosts announce Achilles is preparing his finishing move. They question whether Mayer will be able to dodge an attack like this. Philip stares as the weapon hurtles towards him, realizing he's in real danger. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupts across the entire stage. The smoke clears and he's stunned. Philip dodged it somehow. And trust me, this is the moment everything changes. Philip is right behind him. Achilles can't believe it. There's no way he could have moved that fast. Philip quips his uncle Roger would kill him for this, but he had no choice. He has to win this match because Simon placed all his hopes on him. Then he warns Achilles he'll regret forcing him to use his full power. Achilles is absolutely impressed by the strong aura radiating from Philip. He admits he sensed something was off about Philip's movements earlier. But now he finally realizes it. He's met a truly worthy opponent. Suddenly, Monarch's face appears in the cockpit, absolutely furious. "What the hell are you doing? Are you crazy struggling against a heap of junk?" Monarch reminds Achilles of the dire consequences if he actually loses this fight. He apologized to Mono for letting him down, shouting that from now on he would deliver a performance worth watching. Achilles repositioned himself and dashed forward. He screamed at Mayer that they'd save their duel for another day, but trust me, there won't be one. Piloting Mayer, Philip just calmly apologized, saying he was too busy to accept another fight. Achilles unleashes a devastating attack, causing the entire ground to shatter on impact. But he's left in shock when Mayer suddenly disappears right before his eyes. And here's where it gets crazy. In a flash, Mayer cuts off Achilles' arm with a single swing. As the massive gig collapses, a dazed Achilles recognizes the pilot's insane speed and power. Suddenly, he remembers the rider who vanished 3 years ago, the undefeated legend. The Gigant Arena's mythic fighter, the Black Knight's phantom sword. Yeah, you and I both know who that is. Mayer finishes Achilles with another swift, clean slash. Game over. The host screams in amazement, declaring that something absolutely unprecedented had just occurred. Achilles was taken down in an instant, and the winner of the match was Mayer, the shocking underdog. The entire audience erupts into thunderous cheers, celebrating Mayer's unbelievable victory. Achilles' pilot starts laughing, telling Philip he can't believe he's meeting the Black Knight again. A surprised Philip asks the man if he actually knows him. The pilot explains that he fought the Black Knight in the Royal Arena 3 years ago. But he was left in total awe after the legend vanished right after his record-setting winning streak. He then asks Philip why on earth a legend like him is in a place like this. Philip humbly replies that he is the Black Knight, but it was only natural for him to step in. He just wanted to help people who were in desperate need of it. The pilot understands and promises he will keep the fact he's the Black Knight a secret. Philip thanks him for the trouble, but the rider, growing tired, just says it's fine and waves it off. Meanwhile, Victor is crying his eyes out, telling Reina that they actually won. Reina, completely puzzled, asks Victor why he's crying during such a happy moment. Simon watches a smiling Reina and decides that everything worked out in the end. He quietly walks away from the stage, feeling he can finally leave that place. His heart is lighter now. As he walks, he stops and glances at the betting board. He reflects that gambling is all about seeing the bigger picture. Mayer's odds had been set at 21-1. He thought how easy it was to make money here. He then reviewed the final payout for the team, and trust me, you're gonna wanna see these numbers. They had sold a statue for 3,000 pesos, doubling it to 6,000 through gambling. Then they earned another 4,000 pesos, making their total 10,000. But with that insane 21-1 payout from Mayer's victory, their final sum, it amounted to an absolutely staggering 210,000 pesos.